Namaskar and welcome, friends. My name is Dr. Shailesh Agrawal. I am Executive Director, Building Materials and Technology Promotion Council. And today I'm going to conduct an interactive session on emerging construction systems being used in lighthouse projects with Professor Meher Prasad and Professor Devdas Menon. Both of them are professors at IIT Madras and have loads of experience as regards emerging construction systems. I'm not reading your biodata. With this little introduction, I warmly welcome both of you and thank you for joining the discussion today.
Thank you, Shailesh.
Thank you.
Yeah, Professor Menon and Professor Prasad, as you are aware, that Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Government of India, initiated Global Housing Technology Challenge India, and you both have been part and parcel of it, this challenge. And in fact, your director, even he was also part and parcel of this challenge. Through this challenge, sir, we created a basket of 54 new construction systems, which are broadly classified into 6 broad categories. And if I have to give the genesis, that 6 categories, I took that categorization from one of the presentation made by Professor Meher Prasad in one of our conferences. So from there, I took that categorization, and now that categorization somehow has become a sacrosanct kind of thing. So those 6 broad categories, are now being used in 6 lighthouse projects with 6 distinct technologies under each category. These lighthouse projects are being treated as live laboratories. And if you know, yesterday in Mann Ki Baat program, Honorable Prime Minister did talk about these lighthouse projects and asked, all youngsters to, he used the phrase, to learn is to grow. So he wanted all, youngsters to learn about the technologies, and that's how India can grow. So, sir, these lighthouse projects are live laboratories, and we have also rolled a scheme of technograhis who are being given online training through e-course and the e-module. And I am entrusted with the responsibility of creating that e-module. And we are also taking these technograhis to the sites of these 6 lighthouse projects for learning regarding field level implementation and further applications. Let me also tell you at this moment, sir, these technograhis are not only technical professionals, but also faculty members, research students, public and private officials, developers, builders, policymakers, construction agencies, and startup innovators and entrepreneurs. So, sir, if you want, I can very quickly tell you the 6 broad categories being used in 6 lighthouse projects, or you know about them?
You can say that one for record.
Okay, for record. These 6 broad categories being used in 6 lighthouse projects are, number 1 is precast concrete construction, where 2D planar elements, mainly column, beam, slab, staircases, these are being used at Chennai, where structural elements are cast offsite and assembled at site with cumulative jointing. So that is number 1 category. Second category is precast concrete construction, 3D volumetric construction, which is being used at Ranchi. This technology makes use of various structural modules with services being manufactured off-site and then erected at site, one over other, like Lego blocks. So third category is precast sandwich panel system, or you can say, drywall construction. This is being used in Indore with structural steel frame. So skeleton is of structural steel, and the walls are precast sandwich panel system. These panel systems are primarily drywall elements with light core that is sandwiched between 2 outer faces of calcium silicate board or fiber cement board. Sir, the fourth category is the most popular one, is monolithic concrete construction, which is also known as with the name of aluminum formwork. Here we are using tunnel formwork. And this technology is being used at Rajkot. It is a customized formwork of steel made in a factory, which enables modular tunnel construction in a single pour by casting the structural walls and slab together. So let's move to the 5th category. 5th category is light gauge steel structure system, which is being used in Agartala, again, along with structural steel frame. So the skeleton is of structural steel, whereas the wall panels are of light gauge steel structure, steel. These wall panels are cold form steel with inner and outer faces of precast concrete panels, and the hollow space is being filled with lightweight concrete at site. So last category is stay in place formwork system, which is also known as loss formwork, or sacrificial formwork. This is being used in Lucknow. It acts as an insulation or part of a structure. Here we are using PVC stained place wall forms, and again they are being used with hot rolled steel structural frames. So, sir, having explained you these six technologies, I'm going to ask you a few commonly raised questions about the systems being used. We are recording the entire discussion with the objective that our technograhis who are going to be change agents to bring technology transition in the construction sector can understand the various facets of these systems and at the same time decode the prevailing misconceptions related to cost, structural and functional performance, maintenance, etc. So with these few words, if you both are ready, I will just ask you questions one by one. And if both of you want to intervene, you can, both of you can give your response, or otherwise one of you as you wish.
Yep.
So shall I start, sir?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, please.
Sir, one of the most asked question is, precast concrete construction have not performed well during past earthquakes worldwide. So can we conclude through these standalone, I'm using the word standalone. So can we conclude through these standalone failures that precast concrete construction is not suitable in Indian context, whether it is 2D or it is 3D?
Yeah, in the past, there are a few cases of poor performance of precast, but the modern precast technologies adopted all over the world. In fact, in the recent Turkey earthquake, I think also they performed well. So it all depends upon how you execute and how you design and how you take care of the things. Especially if you are using emulative construction joints, they are supposed to perform as good as cast in situ construction. So yes, there are few things you have to pay attention to: connections and their behavior, and then some dimensionality issues that you have to address. But there have been codes where in Japan and everywhere you are seeing 36-story building being constructed in seismic prone regions, and they're found to be performing well. See, even in the modern Apple building, Apple headquarters, it's a precast building. Of course, they used it on a friction pendulums, on top of friction pendulums. But it is possible to design, and we can ensure that good seismic performance of these buildings. Okay, it is a question of planning and then execution.
Would you like to add something, Professor Menon?
Yeah, I think the question is a very valid question. Professor Mahendra Prasad's reply is also correct, but it implies that a lot of care is going to be taken. And the examples he cited are not the examples that we expect for routine construction in Indian conditions. So we know Indian conditions. So I think to allay the fears of people, which are genuine fears, it would be wise, unless we are very sure of the quality of construction and the design, to not use these in high seismic zones. And even when we use them, use with lesser number of stories and make them more lightweight and understand where exactly the failures are going to be. Take extra precautions at the joints where we can anticipate failure. So a cycle, not only we should have the confidence that structurally it's going to work, but we should also allay the psychological fears that people have, which are quite understandable. So we cannot quote examples from countries where they, like Japan, where they have really mastered this, and really money is also not much of a problem. We want cost-effective solutions. And that, I think, is something still to be worked upon in future, because cost angle also should be looked at. So these are genuine fears, and as engineers, we should worry about them. It's not to be dismissed lightly. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just add what Devdas has mentioned. Okay. See, for seismic regions, you can still have a lateral load resisting system, which is still cast in situ, but you can have a lot more precast elements being used, which can also serve the purpose. In fact, some of these mixed constructions are becoming popular because of showing that your performance is fully complied with all the codes of practice. And the second one is you have an industrialized construction, which will ensure that you have a timely delivery of the projects. Okay, so it is possible to have a good construction means. The other point that I would like to make is for 3D volumetric things. See, we have done only component level tests, but we have not done system level tests fully. Okay, see, that's the reason why people are a little hesitant. To a certain extent, they are justified, but that system level testing need to be done a little bit. Okay, so that will enhance the confidence of these precast systems, especially 3D volumetric precast systems.
Okay. Thank you, sir. My next question, because Menon sir, we have grown up, reading your book on reinforced concrete structure. So my next question is about joints and connections. Whenever I deliver a lecture, every time it is being asked, about joints and connections of precast concrete construction. And when I talk to wide spectrum of researchers, practitioners, academicians, I am being told that there are three kinds of existing joints and connections being used in precast concrete system. One is emulative joint system, which is also known as bed jointing. Another one is mechanical joint system, and a third one is dry jointing with mechanical connectors, which normally we use for the metal structural frames. And I am always being told by professionals that all these joints and connections are being designed and detailed for desired performance parameters. So absolutely there is no problem. So what is your take on this with regard to Indian context?
Okay. Especially for dry joints, now we don't have enough experimental evidence. Okay, and also not enough number of buildings are really tested for real earthquakes. Okay, in the sense, because that's the question that is always pops in everyone's mind. Okay, so as I just mentioned before, it is important that we have a system level testing. Okay, there are facilities. I think it is worthwhile investing to do these extra testing procedures are implemented, okay, so that now we gain a lot of confidence. Okay, but see, even in New Zealand and all these places, people have used, in Italy, people have used precast things. There is absolutely, I mean, there are some grounds to do that one, but most often, no, we do analysis based on equivalent static, even though we estimate the loads, but we do the design using the static principles. One of the most important things is to be sure where you are going to dissipate your energy, which elements are going to do, are going to play a role in dissipating the energy. Okay, especially in earthquake sense. Okay, so those principles, those capacity design principles, we have to properly follow. Then there won't be any issue. But not a common engineer is still not exposed to such level of sophistication yet. Okay. But that should never stop you from using the newer technologies. But at the same time, we should be cautious. I agree with Professor Devadas Menon's, at least in the Indian context, we have to be a little more cautious. So that's the worthwhile proposition we can take at this point.
Professor Menon?
I just want to add, in the interest of the common public who are going to use this.
Yes, sir.
It's true that there is some research evidence that these things can be designed and they work. But then you use them first in regular buildings. Even if you have to spend more, let people live in those buildings, occupy those buildings, rather than begin by experimenting on poor people. That to me it would be the right approach. So we have to attain a level of maturity, and then this will be viable. But to immediately try this on you're calling it lighthouse project immediately, do it, but in a low seismic zone where the potential is less. So I hope you've chosen a low seismic zone for your project.
Yes, sir. Chennai.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it is in Chennai and Ranchi. Yeah.
Chennai is zone 3.
Yes.
So zone 2 would be ideal.
Yeah.
Because zone 3 is still
yes.
It's possible. But till we get more confidence and we do more testing, and we see them perform in real earthquakes. See, final test is that. So we should wait, in my opinion, till that confidence we get.
Okay. So Ranchi is in zone 2, where we are using 3D volumetric construction, and Chennai is in zone 3, where they are using wet jointing. So basically, this is a showcase technology where they have
emulator construction is, I think, is a reasonable risk to take.
They have a cast in situ core. So it acts as a formwork, that precast column casing, and they have half cast slabs over which they lay the reinforcement. That reinforcement is connected with the reinforcement of column and beam, and then screed is being done. So, sir, there is one more question about precast concrete construction, which bothers me time and again, is about their functional performance. So functional performance, if I have to qualify in terms of thermal comfort, water tightness, and fire resistance. Would you like to elaborate on these aspects?
You're missing out one more point, sustainability.
Yes, sustainability. Okay, sir. You can.
It's very important in today's time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So please elaborate on these 4.
So if I have to answer, these are valid questions. But even in regular buildings, they are valid questions. The biggest problem you find in multi-storied in flat buildings is drainage is a problem. Toilets leaking is a problem. Rainwater seeping in is a problem. And so regular maintenance is needed even for regular buildings. And if you're going for precast, those junctions are very important. See, the precast wall thickness itself, you have to look into. If it has to be relatively impermeable. So even if the joints work, it should not seep through the wall. And secondly, especially where you have projections, where you have openings, doors and windows, there are tests available to make sure that those are all made seal-proof, waterproof. But I don't know whether those things are being done, because in a hurry, in mass construction, we have to be cautious and careful. So these are problems that can be solved, but they need a lot of attention and a lot of supervision, quality control, and testing. I don't know if that is being done. So,
see, today we have sealants to give a good performance, especially against the rain and water leakage wise. There are enough number of things available, but there is you have to be careful because it's not just normally we engineers check only for strength, but there are small details that you have to provide to ensure that you have a leak-proof behavior of these things are guaranteed. Okay, so those details they're available. In fact, if you take the example of Singapore, they have done large number of precast construction, and those small details, if you follow that one, you can just guarantee a good performance against the water leakage. So that can be done. In fact, precast handbooks, most of the precast handbooks that are available, okay, they do give you some ideas of how to detail those joints and what type of sealants and how they have to be used. And that is important. In fact, anytime you wanted to have such technologies, you have to have an exposure to such some of these things and done properly. Okay, there is no, and another important thing is the dimensionality control. That is, whatever elements that you produce, you have to produce at with the tolerances. See, you cannot. You have to have a millimeter tolerances. Then only you will get an excellent joint and joint performance can be guaranteed. Okay. So today we have such kinds of production technologies that are available. the new plants I've seen in the precast plants. I wouldn't like to name them this one, but they have these things properly implemented. So, but still you need a good engineering, not just the structural engineering part of the things there, but a good functional approach to solving for the things there. Regarding fire, fire is always an issue that you need to pay attention to, because see, we have only one testing facility. So when we did the testing for various cases, especially on precast and also for the other things there, the variances that we observed is quite large. In fact, what seems to be more important is the cover, and then your concrete mix design, everything makes a difference. In fact, the water moisture content that you have, all those things also play a role in performance of the things there. But concrete being used, if you use the good this one there, you can still easily get to our performance. It is possible. We can get the things there. And then unfortunately, the fire design wise, we use a very prescriptive approach, and the codes are given. You are supposed to give a certain amount of thickness, cover, and percentage of steel. But there are little more detailed ways of looking at the problems. Okay. Still, our codes of practice are not conversant with that one yet, but I think it is going to come. It's just a matter of time. Okay. Then the third issue that you have mentioned about the thermal performance.
Yes.
The thermal performance wise, you have to plan. Supposing if you have a building with a veranda, then thermal issue is not an issue. This one, how you orient your building and how you, they all play a role. Yes, direct concrete as such with 120 mm or 150 mm, I think thickness that you provide. Sometimes locally you may have a thermal performance issue, but it comes in a delayed way. It won't be immediately. And things that it is an issue, but we have to solve it in using some of those thermal design principles along with your structural engineering. Okay, we can solve those problems. In fact, that is something which need to be done. That is, to a certain extent, we can apply some of the functional design concepts to the buildings, and to mitigate the thermal insulation we can ensure for the buildings.
I just want to add, see, of these three issues, the most problematic is water seepage and leakage. And despite all the high quality promised by even the best contractors, you have to look at reality. You have to look at the buildings they have constructed. And you'll find that they all are aware that this is a very major problem, which happens. I mean, we cannot wish it away. So if the best contractors in the business are also vulnerable, imagine the fate when you make this available to Janta. Anybody can build it. So we have to be careful there. Regarding fire, I think the present code, at least the concrete code, is a little conservative. And they want to cut corners and say we'll use Eurocode and all that. So as far as the prevailing code goes, I think we have a reasonable control, though it's the contractors don't like it much. But we can think of reducing that. And ventilation is absolutely a must. So we have to look at issues related to how to, improve ventilation, reduce the heat gathering, because you're living in a concrete jungle. Yeah? Slab is concrete, the walls are concrete, and if it's all boxed in, it's going to be quite difficult to live. So that's a reality, but that's where you have to look into how best to allow for natural ventilation, because I don't think you are aiming for air conditioning in such things. And if necessary, provide insulation. And if so, how to provide it. So those are issues that have to be looked into.
Thank you. Sir, my next question is about, nowadays the cold form steel and hot rolled steel, because the way it is being manufactured, and we have variety of sections available. And in Technograhi's, for which we are doing this session, there are a whole lot of students, planners. So both of you are great structural engineers. So I just want to know from you, please tell our audience the benefits of cold form and hot rolled steel structural system.
Yeah, see, cold form steel structures, no, right now, no, as a building systems, we are still not gone to very tall buildings. It's only just 4-story buildings around that one. Because I know one of our own students is involved in that one, and his experience has been quite good, Bharat. Okay, so it is possible to do that one, but as I mentioned in the earlier things, the lateral load performance-wise, you can integrate and do well ensure that performance is good. And usually, cold form steel structures happen to be lighter structures generally, so we can expect them to perform well in the during seismicity. At the same time, being thin thing, they are vulnerable for buckling. Okay, the thing is, the ductility performance wise, you have to watch out a little bit. But for a 4-story type of a building, I think it is a viable option which you could use. Regarding hot rolled sections, there need not be any inhibitions on that one. So it all depends upon how you provide your lateral load resistance system, system that you wanted to have, or a framing system that you want to have. Okay, so these are some issues that as a designer you have to decide upon, and then you can still use those principles for the things. If you look at in different cities, I mean, all over the world, if you look at that one, it is not prevalent because of the economics of it. Steel is expensive option in an Indian context. But elsewhere it has been used. But okay, if not for residential buildings, mostly for office buildings, they have been used, and the performance has been quite well. Yeah, you have to still follow all the principles of structural engineering. Good structural engineering practice is still required. There's no escape from that.
Yeah, I think the use of steel should be encouraged. Structurally, it is possible to make them strong and stiff and so on. The main reason why they're not popular in India is because at least hot rolled steel was always turning out to be more expensive compared to concrete, because concrete is, labor is also relatively cheap in India. So that's why concrete is definitely having an edge over steel. But in terms of speed of construction, it makes sense to use steel, use it economically. One thing to worry about the use of steel is fire resistance. So they have to be protected. If they are exposed, you have other issues of corrosion, which are more severe in steel than in concrete. So all those precautions need to be taken. Cold form steel is a good option, but it needs to be done carefully. The connections have to be done carefully. Buckling has to be taken care of. Lateral load resistance system should be ensured. And it's been used all over the world. So I think we need to encourage it, but scale up slowly, start with less rise buildings and move up. But certainly, I think we should encourage.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now, there are a few general questions for the sake of Technograhi's. I want both of you to answer, what are the checks and balances one has to undertake while designing and constructing buildings using these emerging construction systems?
Very simple rule. Knowledgeable people should use it. I mean, they are the ones careful and safety conscious people are the ones, who can effectively promote these things. Okay, that is the most essential thing. Yeah, in some ways, these are not really new. If you take in the worldwide context, no, people have been using it. But we don't have enough codes of practices on these things. Okay, so that's why we need to be a little more careful in application of the things there. And it's also important we have to create a proper ecosystem in the sense there are a lot of other issues that come into the picture because it's not a one structural aspect is one aspect, but there are other functional aspects that you also have to look at and how you integrate those things, they play a role in success of some of these technologies in Indian context.
I think design-wise, you have to be very clear and reasonably conservative. It has to be code compliant and it should be proof checked reasonably. So design-wise, I think there is enough know-how. It's in construction, quality of construction, and as you pointed out, the functional issues that I feel the real worry is going to be. It is not so much in design. And that's India's biggest worry because every building, anyone who's lived in a residential building will say something is wrong. There's a crack here, the plaster is coming off. So those are issues, especially in our weather conditions. There we need skill, we need expertise. And the construction should be done by people with expertise. And there should be adequate supervision. Those are domains that we are likely to fall short of, especially if you want mass construction and if you want to make it cheap. Because the contractor has to make a profit. He's not doing it as a public service. And let him make the profit, but let him deliver and give a guarantee. So if you can build in that guarantee so that if something is missing, corrections can be made. So normally, those are the things where you leave the client high and dry. He's got a house, but he has to keep worrying about. We have to guarantee safety of the building. That can be done, but functionality of the building is something that to me is the biggest problem.
Okay. So my next question is with regard to structural performance, are these systems superior to cast in place RCC frame construction?
I think I would like to question, what do you mean by superior? See, if you are designing against certain levels of demand, if you properly design, everything will be equal, okay, in the sense performance-wise. We can design it in such a way. So new technologies are neither superior nor inferior, but they have to actually properly utilized, and then we have to show our design intent and we have to properly implement those design intents. Be it a traditional construction, be it a newer technology. Today we have wherewithal to do those things.
I'm surprised by the question itself. Is there a claim being made that these are superior in terms of structural performance? I think that's not a fair question to ask. And the chances are they are not superior. They are inferior. Because we are familiar with the conservatism in conventional design.
Yes, sir.
And there is a fairly high degree of conservatism. People are asking, why can we make it cheaper? That's also possible. But with the new technologies, I'm not sure we can say confidently that we have the same degree of conservatism. But yes, it is the structural engineer's job with the available know-how to make a design reasonably code compliant, meeting the standards that experts have decided on, the margins of safety against all loads and all hazards, including fire, which the National Building Code asks for. I think so. The responsibility of degree of safety rests with the National Building Code. Once you comply with those requirements, we've got the desired safety. Conventional buildings comply or are meant to comply. New technologies had better comply. That's all we can say. But you can't claim that the newborn baby of this generation is superior to the baby during Buddha's time. Maybe Buddha was far superior to all of us put together.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Sir, next is about, you just talked about standards. So there is a constant debate about the codes, design aids, and softwares to be used for design of these buildings. So please elaborate it. Also tell me, do we have requisite Indian standards? Also guide our technographers about the softwares to be used for analysis and design.
We have codes of practice for design, but unfortunately we don't have as many codes of practice for actual implementation part of it, construction practices. We don't have, yeah, we have specifications, but those specifications are not really codified in, I will put it that way, but they are also essential, okay? So especially in the newer technologies, it's better we have clarity on those implementation issues so that we can guarantee the performance of the building over its service life. Those are the comments that I would like to make at this point.
Professor Meni?
See, even in metro like Chennai, buildings have collapsed under construction. We know, we've been in inquiry committees and so on. So even if you have a good code, where is the guarantee that it's going to be implemented? Okay. We don't have a system in this country where we can ensure that designs are checked, because the corporation officials don't have the wherewithal to do it. They only check whether the setback is enough, you understand, whether those building plans, and that too, you know that, a lot of violations are happening, a lot of additions are happening. In Mumbai, in existing buildings, someone wants more space in the ground floor. So he knocks off a main column and the thing caves in. So we have issues. We don't have a clear, and people are building additional floors without knowledge of whether the structure is good enough. So the mere fact that codes are available doesn't guarantee anything, even from a structural performance wise. So I'm just supplementing what Professor. We don't have implementing. It's not law. These are still recommendations. Even the IS 456 is just a recommendation. So recommendations to whom? And also in terms of designers, unlike other countries, anybody can design, and nobody checks. When the sample model flat is given for checking, in the building which collapsed, the flats were purchased by engineers whom we know. They come to us. So I said, how did you purchase a flat? Couldn't you see that the size of the column is so small for a 12-story building? Then he confessed, he said, no, when I took my family to the model flat, we were impressed by the furnishing and, the plastering and all that. So there's a big problem. So if engineers fail to detect obvious errors, then what's, so we have to be careful.
Yes, sir.
And it's a matter of integrity. So the tendency to cut corners, the structural cost is actually very small compared to the total cost. If there you try to stinge on the quality of materials used or the area of steel to be put in, that's to me India's biggest problem. We still have 230 by 230 mm column in multi-storied buildings here in cities like Chennai. So where is the thinking? Who's checking? So we can get away with anything today till the building falls down. Then it will fall on somebody's head, and then you need lawyers to help them up. But that's not the way out. So my question is back to the government. Where is the implementing agency? We can come up with good codes, but how do you ensure that the codes are complied?
Yes.
Number one, the drawing submitted and what is actually built, there's a gap there also. How do we ensure that? These are major issues, and I think it's a big problem in our country. Thank you.
Okay. Sir, the next is a perennial question. I'm still telling it like perennial question. While dealing with these emerging construction systems, this question always comes, is their cost comparable to conventional construction? And how should it be addressed?
Yeah, I have a standard answer, okay? You see, even if you have a very cost-effective solution, will you share with others? Okay, no, that's a question. Whom are you going to share with? Are you going to share with the contractor? Are you going to share with the final user? We don't know, okay? So why? Because it all depends upon different points of time. Initially, whatever newer technologies that you're going to have, it is likely to be costlier than the traditional things, because they would have optimized their more number of people. People know how it can be done. The skill required is already there. Okay, and then whereas for the newer technologies, you may require people to train in a particular way. We may have to incur costs associated with the training and creating the proper ecosystem for it to flourish. Okay, so the thing is, yes, there are apparently what you can show is some advantages may be there, but in most of these emerging technologies, the main thing is an industrialized way of construction. Okay, so that your productivity levels are improved a lot. Thereby, in a larger sense, you may get economy, but who gets the share is something questionable. Okay, and then there are sustainability issues. There are so many other things that there are so many other issues that you have to address, and there are, unfortunately, costs associated with that one are not really figured out. Okay, the benefits associated with that one are also not figured out. So we have to have a balance. I think at this point of time, we have to be open for emerging technology. So in the sense, yeah, they should be given space, and at the same time, some guarantees such that they really do what they actually promise. Okay, so that is something which we have to ensure.
Yeah, cost should be understood in a holistic manner. Cost is not just how many rupees per square foot you pay at the time of buying the flat or selling the flat. Cost includes the life cycle cost. Cost includes the cost to the environment.
Yes, sir.
And today, that's a major cost. Sustainability also has to be looked into. All the technologies that you're showing, I don't think that aspect has been highlighted. For example, a pure concrete building is a high cost in terms of sustainability. So it's to minimize the use of concrete and steel that we should aim for. So we have to look into all these aspects. Having said that, there is also an urgency in doing rapid construction, in providing housing to so many people, and conventional construction has those disadvantages. So even if the cost is on par or even slightly more in the beginning, I think these technologies should be encouraged with the assumption that with mass production in the not too distant future, they will have an edge over conventional construction. So, but don't miss out on the cost to the environment.
Yes, sir.
Even when the life of the structure is over, what are you going to do with the structure? You're going to break it and do what? Where will you dispose? So lots of issues to be looked into. Today, we should look into that when we talk about cost.
So last two questions. At present, there are very few agencies in India who work in these technologies. How it can be scaled up to bring more and more players in the arena to meet growing urban needs of housing and infrastructure?
You have to give them incentives. You have to attract them. You have to educate them. I think that's the way forward. Anything new will take time to be accepted. But if it's going to work out, because now I think even contractors, companies are realizing that the real market is not the high income group, not the middle income group, it's this group. And the need is large, and if the incentives are there, people are looking for technologies. In fact, people write to us and ask for whatever technology so that has to be encouraged in a big way. A lot of education has to be done, but then we should also deliver what we promise. Sometimes we inflate the advantages, and we are not realistic. So it's a long haul, but we have to all work together in this direction.
The other thing which is important is the scale at which we need housing. Okay, to deliver that one, we're using conventional technologies in a reasonable amount of time. We won't be able to build the demand. Okay? So that's the reason. That's actually the motivation for some of these technologies. And what we actually aim through these technologies is to quick delivery of the residential units for a larger number of public. Okay, that's what is the main objective of this technology.
Sir, my last question is, in the wake of clarion call given by Honorable Prime Minister of to be Atmanirbhar Bharat, or self-reliant India, and to build a new young India, how both of you see the future of these technologies in the Indian construction sector? Number one. And number two is, do you think we can become global leaders in this sector in the future?
Yeah, there is a possibility, because the opportunity is there to demonstrate for the rest of the world that we can deliver to our own housing needs in a reasonably quicker pace. Okay, that's what we have to really demonstrate. Okay, yes, we have to increase our capacities of delivery. We have to be absorbent to the newer technologies. At least we should be open enough to do that one. And at the same time, no, we have to be economical too, in a holistic way. As a circular economy, you have to look and then see what is the right way to go about doing the things there. Yeah, there is an opportunity. How young people are getting motivated for that one. So I think the more industrialized way of production, okay, the more likely that people may get attracted to this particular thing. If you still do it the same common conventional way, people will not be not much open for, especially the younger minds may not be so much open for this actual delivery of buildings. When it comes, they may not be so much.
I think there's an important point to motivate young people. Well, the key way to motivate is through education.
Okay.
And I think all students in engineering, especially civil engineering, must have an exposure to this. And ideally, if it can be, all this put together can be taught as an elective course in the curriculum under the broad topic of housing, in comparisons of conventional and these emerging technologies, encouraging students to also do research, to build, to take part in social projects. There are NSS type of projects or CSR projects where they also participate and they also learn, and to encourage more new technologies to emerge in this sector by inviting research proposals also in this direction, not just the existing ones, but new ones, and a scientific approach to the whole thing, so that the complete performance is fully understood and tested. That is the way forward. We have to do it. I mean, there's no other way out. But at the very least, in every college, to give talks, to give presentations, so that students and faculty and the public get an exposure. See, without education, you can't move forward.
Yes,
so bring it in media, in TV programs, highlight these in a fair way. I mean, we have to be ready when we do that. So to me, that is paramount. This is our problem. This is India's problem. So I'm not so much concerned about going to the next step, which is showing off to the world and all that, to be a global leader. First, we have to solve our problem, in-house problem. I think the Honorable Prime Minister also has that in mind. This is our problem. We have to solve it.
Yes.
To me, the other thing of being a global leader is a secondary problem. That's meaningful if we've solved our problem and we want to also help other countries solve their problem, which is also a noble thing, but we need to solve our problem. We need to finish vaccination in our country first. This is a kind of vaccination. We have to vaccinate our people from poverty, from the lack of housing. Only we can do it. We must do it. Okay.
Yeah, I think I just want to add what Professor Devdas was mentioning. The moment their innovation-driven approach, if you take, the younger people will get more inspired. So that the innovation-driven thing that we have to demonstrate, okay, that is the most important thing.
I think before, sir, I say thanks to both of you. Would you like to say something to our Technograhis as concluding remarks? You know about our initiative. You know the kind of work we are doing to bring a paradigm shift in the construction sector. And it's a rare opportunity for me to listen to both of you in such a candid, atmosphere. So would you like to say something to our Technograhis as passing or concluding remarks?
Yeah, see, your effort has been very modest. And you have to start thinking how to scale up. Okay. And how do you reach to the mass, larger audience in a more systematic way. Okay. So what you may have to do also is, so you have to look at the number of resource persons that you want to have and how you're going to scale up. So the way it is being done is only very focused way in a very small settings. Okay, say at each time you're able to educate maybe 100 people, 150 people, maybe 10 times, 15 times, of course you'll get tired. Okay, but the way you have to do is how to scale up. How do you prepare these modules and how do you ensure those things there? And so today we may have to use some of these modern IT-based ways of looking at the things there. That whenever a question pops up, there should be a way to answer the things there. There should be a repository of things. It's just not one-off experiment, but you have to institutionalize, and someone has to take a leadership role and own it. And so only then you can deliver the things it is possible. Okay. So the important aspect is how do you scale it up? Okay. And to what level of penetration that you want to have, what measures that you have to take, and how do you institutionalize those things? They are the ones which will play a greater role. I think this is a good start, but for every good start, you have to also ensure that there is a good finish and it gets the objective. It meets the objectives that which you have originally planned in a larger scale.
Yes. So I agree with Professor Meher Prasad's remarks. I think you have made a good start. You need to build on it. You need to create an impact. If I may suggest, I was initially confused when I saw this title Lighthouse Projects, because we do a lot of lighthouse projects, real lighthouses, no? And not lighthouse. Lighthouse for the Ministry of Shipping. In fact, most of the lighthouses in India, IIT Madras has been involved. So I don't know whether these houses are all light. The light word can be probably substituted with something more appropriate. Maybe this is rapid or whatever, but that's just, I mean, it struck my mind that it is not. And the challenge before all of us, especially you, is huge, humongous. So we should acknowledge that. The problem itself is so vast. And given the size of the problem, I think you have done reasonably well in initiating it, but you have to be careful and you need to scale up. You're also not directly either the designer or the contractor, you're in between. And the in-between person's role is always difficult because you get pulled in many directions, and then the ministry is also there, and you need to deliver. But that is your job, that's your responsibility, and it's very difficult, very challenging. We, especially faculty in IITs, are here to help you in whatever way we can.
Thank you.
Please feel free to ask us, because we recognize the difficulties faced by our country. We would like to help in whatever manner possible. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. With this, we come to end of this valuable discussion. I have no words to express my gratitude towards both of you for acceding to my request and for responding to each question elaborately and candidly. Thank you very much, Professor Prasad and Professor Menon.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us the opportunity. Okay. And I hope this is a precursor to a more sustained approach to housing in India.
Yes, sir. So my last sentence: with persons like you around, I'm confident that the mission of Government of India to bring a paradigm shift in the way we build by introducing cutting-edge technologies will be successful. And these emerging systems will be the technologies of future in India, as envisaged by Honorable Prime Minister. And I'm also quite optimistic that there is not far when India will become one of the global leaders in innovation construction technologies. With this, it is time for me to sign off. I will come back with a fresh discussion on another technology with other subject specialists. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.